The referendum on EU membership took place on the 23rd of June 2016. Opinion polling for the United Kingdom European Union membership referendum was ongoing. In the months between the announcement of the referendum and the referendum polling day, polls on the general principle of Britain's membership of the European Union were carried out for a number of years prior to the referendum. Opinion polls of voters in general tended to show roughly equal proportions in favour of remaining and leaving. Polls of business leaders, scientists, and lawyers showed majorities in favour of remaining. Among non-British citizens in other EU member states, polling suggested that a majority were in favour of the UK remaining in the EU in principle, but that a similarly sized majority believed that if the UK were only able to remain in the EU on renegotiated terms then it should leave. Analysis. Demographics. Younger voters tended to support remaining in the EU whereas older people tended to support leaving. There was no significant difference in attitudes between the genders. According to 2 out of 3 pollsters, managerial, professional and administrative workers were most likely to favour staying in the EU, while semi-skilled and unskilled workers, plus those reliant on benefits, were the largest demographics supporting leave. University graduates are generally more likely to vote Remain compared to those with no qualifications. White voters were evenly split, and all ethnic minority groups leant towards backing Remain, but registration is lower and turnout can be up to 25% lower in this demographic. Support for remaining in the EU was known to be significantly higher in Scotland than it is in Great Britain as a whole, with Scottish voters saying they are generally more likely to vote. Polling methods. The way voters are polled is known to affect the outcome. Telephone polls have consistently found more support for remaining in the EU than online polls. YouGov, which uses online polling, has criticized telephone polls because they have too high a percentage of graduates, skewing the results. Ipsos Mori and Comrades, and Peter Kellner, the former president of YouGov, have said telephone polls are more reliable. ICM has said, as good a guess as any is that the right answer lies somewhere in between. A joint study by Populus and Number Cruncher Politics in March 2016 concluded that telephone polls were likely to better reflect the state of public opinion on the issue. The results of the referendum, as with the results of the 2015 general election, show that there is still a problem with the polling methodology. Overall, however, online polls seem to have had a better performance than phone polls. Online polls, on average, predicted a leave-win with a 1.2% margin, whereas phone polls had remain-win with a 2.6% margin. Polls of polls. Several different groups have calculated polls of polls, which collect and average the results of opinion polls across different companies. They have different methodologies. For example, some give more weight to recent polls than others, some deal with undecided voters differently, and some attempt to adjust for the consistent gap between telephone and online polling. As a result, the polls of polls give a spread of results. Standard polling on EU membership. The tables show polling on whether the UK should be in or out of the EU. Polling generally weights the sample to be nationally representative. Polls were usually conducted within Great Britain, with Northern Ireland and Gibraltar normally omitted from the sample. This has historically been the case in British opinion polling because Northern Ireland has a different set of political parties from the rest of the UK, reflecting the political divide between unionism and nationalism or republicanism. Similarly, Gibraltar was not included in standard polls because it has its own local legislature and does not take part in British parliamentary elections, although Gibraltar does take part in elections to the European Parliament and took part in the referendum. Most of the polls shown here were carried out by members of the British Polling Council who fully disclose the findings, methodology and the client who commissioned the poll. As non-members, Creasley, Greenberg, Quinn and Rossner Research, Pew Research Centre and Lord Ashcroft polls are not bound by the standards of the BPC, and the polls should be treated with caution. The percentages who would not vote or who refuse to answer are not shown below, although some pollsters have excluded these in any case. 2016, 2015, 2014, 2013, 2012, 2011, 2010 Subnational polling. England and Wales, London, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Gibraltar renegotiated terms. The UK government renegotiated certain terms of the UK's membership of the European Union before the referendum was held. Prior to the renegotiation in February 2016, some opinion polls asked the referendum question on the assumption that the UK government would say that it was satisfied with the outcome of the renegotiation. Polling within professional groups. Business leaders. The British Chambers of Commerce surveyed 2,200 business leaders in January and February 2016. Of these, 60% supported remaining in the EU and 30% supported exit. In a further poll published in May, these numbers had changed to 54% and 37% respectively. The Confederation of British Industry reported a survey of 773 of its members, carried out by Comrays, with numbers adjusted to reflect CBI membership. The poll indicated that 80% of CBI members saw a Remain outcome as the best outcome for the business, with 5% seeing Leave as the best outcome. In a poll of 350 board directors of UK businesses published in June 2015, 82% agreed with the statement that the UK's membership of the EU is good for British businesses, while 12% disagreed. In a follow-up poll reported in March 2016, 63% agreed that British businesses are better off inside the European Union than out of it, while 20% disagreed. To the statement, an EU exit risks stifling British business growth, 59% agreed and 30% disagreed. To the statement, our membership of the EU gives British businesses invaluable access to European markets, 71% agreed and 16% disagreed. 35% agreed that an EU exit would leave British businesses facing a skills shortage, while 50% disagreed. The manufacturers' organisation EEF used the market research organisation GfK to conduct a survey in late 2015 of 500 senior decision-makers in manufacturing organisations. Of these, 63% wanted the UK to stay in the EU, and 5% wanted it to leave. 3% said there was no advantage to the businesses for the UK to be in the EU, against 50% who said it was important and a further 20% who said it was critical for the business. Two surveys by consultants Deloitte asked 120 chief financial officers of large UK companies whether it is in the interest of UK businesses for the UK to remain a member of the EU. In the first survey, in the final quarter of 2015, 62% agreed while 6% disagreed. A further 28% said they would withhold their judgment until the renegotiation in February 2016. The second survey, in early 2016, had 75% saying it was in the interest of UK businesses to remain, with 8% saying it was not. In April 2016, the International Chamber of Commerce published a survey of 226 businesses from 27 different countries. Of these international businesses, 46% said they would reduce investment in the UK if it left the EU, while 1% said Brexit would increase their investment in the UK. As to whether the UK should leave the EU, 8% thought it should, while 86% wanted the UK to remain. In May 2016, law firm King & Amp Wood Mallesons published a survey of 300 businesses, equally split between France, Spain, Italy, and Germany, asked about the prospect of the UK leaving the EU. 68% said it would adversely affect the businesses and 62% said they would be less likely to do business in the UK. When asked to name ways in which the businesses could benefit from Brexit, a majority of respondents in France, Italy, and Spain said that their countries could benefit as companies move jobs out of the UK. Scientists in March 2016, Nature reported a survey of 907 active science researchers based in the UK. Of these, 78% said exit from the EU would be somewhat harmful or very harmful for UK science, with 9% saying it would be somewhat beneficial or very beneficial. Asked, should the UK exit the EU or remain, 83% chose remain and 12% exit. The journal also surveyed a further 954 scientists based in the EU but outside the UK. Of these, 47% said the UK's exit would be harmful or very harmful for science in the EU, with 11.5% choosing beneficial or very beneficial. Lawyers Legal Week surveyed almost 350 partners in legal firms. Of these, 77% said that a UK exit from the EU would have a negative or very negative effect on the city's position in global financial markets, with 6.2% predicting a positive effect. Asked about the effect on their own firms, 59% of the partners predicted a quite adverse or very adverse effect, while 13% said the effect would be quite positive or very positive. Economists. The Financial Times surveyed 105 economists about how an exit from the EU would affect the views of the UK's prospects, publishing the results in January 2016. In the medium term, 76 respondents said the UK's prospects would be worse, 8 said they would be better, and 18 predicted no difference. Ipsos Mori surveyed members of the Royal Economic Society and the Society of Business Economists for The Observer, with 639 responses. Over the next 5 years, 88% said that Brexit would have a negative effect on GDP, 7% said it would have no impact, and 3% said it would have a positive impact, while 82% said it would have a negative effect on household incomes. 9% said it would have no impact, and 7% said it would have a positive effect. Over 10 to 20 years, 72% said it would have a negative effect on GDP, 11% said it would have no impact and 11% said it would have a positive effect, while 73% said it would have a negative effect on household income. 13% said it would have no impact, and 10% said it would have a positive effect. Other opinion polling. In a poll released in December 2015, Lord Ashcroft asked 20,000 people in the UK to place themselves on a scale of 0 to 100 of how likely they were vote to remain or leave. A total of 47% placed themselves in the leave end of the scale, 38% in the remain end, and 14% were completely undecided. On British withdrawal, France, a poll conducted by French daily newspaper Le Parisien in January 2013 found that 52% of French voters were in favour of the UK withdrawing from the EU. Of the 1,136 people polled, in conjunction with French research agency BVA in January 2013, 48% said they would rather the UK remained inside the EU. Germany, a study carried out by International Politik in January 2013 found 64% of Germans favoured Britain remaining inside the EU, with 36% saying they favoured an exit. The biggest support for retaining the Union with the UK was with the younger generation, with 69% of 18 to 25-year-olds saying they wanted the UK to stay. Amongst the German political parties, the supporters of the Green Party remained most favourable at 85%. Ashcroft polling. In early 2016, Lord Ashcroft polled individuals in each of the other European Union member states to gauge opinion on whether they thought the United Kingdom should leave the EU, whether they thought the UK should remain a member, or whether they believed it didn't matter. All member states said that they wanted the UK to remain a member, except Cyprus, the Czech Republic and Slovenia, with Lithuania being most in favour, at 78% voting for the UK to remain in the EU. Additionally, Ashcroft asked the same group of people whether they would be happy for Britain to remain in the European Union to renegotiate terms, or whether they thought the UK should leave if they don't like their current terms of membership. Newer countries to the European Union, countries which have joined the Union since 2004, were the biggest supporters. 52% supported the renegotiated position, compared to just 40% of respondents from EU members who joined before 2004. ICM polling. An ICM online poll of 1,000 adults in each of 9 European countries in November 2015 found an average of 53% in favour of the UK's remaining in the EU. On the possible withdrawal of other countries, Denmark, a poll commissioned in January 2013 following David Cameron's EU referendum speech found that 52% of Danes would still want the country to stay within the EU even if the UK voted to withdraw. However, 47% said they would like the Danish government to attempt to renegotiate the improved terms of the membership. Ireland, a Red C poll, commissioned by European Movement Ireland in January 2013, found most Irish people would opt for Ireland to remain inside the EU, 66% even if the UK decided to leave. Just 29% of those asked said that Ireland should leave if the UK does.